For God had given strict commandment to such as came, what they should do to what? The commandments that we had received was given so that we could live. It's as simple as that. It's not complicated. Even as they came, and what they should observe to avoid punishment. Doctor gives you a recommendation, says, do this and do that. All right? And if you don't follow it, don't expect to live. All right? This is very, very simple. So I hope you all understand that. Now let's get right into our teaching. What we're talking about here is dealing with Christianity. Because many of our people don't even know why they're doing the things that they are doing. They go into these establishments, and because they see a generic word that says God, or they hear a generic term, peace and love and so forth, be kind to your neighbor, they feel that they're welcome, and that's all that they have to do. If a man is going to get married to a wife, looking for a woman as his mate, what's the first thing that he has to do? Anyone? Huh? Yeah, definitely pray. You're right. Right about that. He prays, but he also has to examine. Right? All right, let's put it this way. I'll make it more simple. If you're going...
Family and origin.
Family and origin. There you go. Family and origin. If you're going to buy a car, there's something called Carfax. Right? What you do is you get the papers to make sure that the car doesn't have any strange accidents happen to it. Something isn't crazy before you buy it. Because when you get it, you're stuck with it. The dealer always tell you, and they don't tell you, well, they don't really tell you directly. But when you purchase a brand new car or a used car or whatever from a dealership, what they want you to do is drive off the lot first. After you sign the papers, drive off the lot. Because they know the day you leave off the lot with that, you own it. It belongs to you. So the reason why I started there is because, as the title says, whose cup are what? Are you drinking from? You don't know the origin of the religion that you join yourself into. What this is just a brief history behind what we call church or churchianity. Churchianity is just a slang for a Christianity and church joined together. There's a prophecy in the book of Psalms, verses 1 to 4. It says, "O God, why have you cast us off forever? Why doth thine anger smoke against the sheep of your pasture?" So there's a question that has been asked, but there's a little bit of prophecy in here that I want us to look at. "Remember your congregation, which you have purchased of old." Now, the question is, in verses 1, we know for a fact that David was the one that was speaking. He was the one that wrote this, right? At the time when David wrote this, was Israel cast off?
No.
No. So we know this is a prophecy of something to come. So David was prophesying of something very important. Verses 2, "Remember your congregation which you have purchased of old, the rod of your inheritance which you have redeemed, this Mount Zion wherein you have dwelt. Lift up your feet unto the perpetual desolations, even all that the enemy have done wickedly in the sanctuary. Your enemies roar in the midst of your congregations." What does it say? They set up their ensigns for what? Their ensigns for signs. So this is a prophecy of enemies that's going to change up things and put their own signs for the signs of Israel. Let's go to the next slide. "A man was famous according as he had lifted up axes upon the thick trees, but now they break down the carved work thereof at once with axes and hammers. Verse 7. They have cast fire into your sanctuary. They have defiled by casting down the dwelling place of your name to the ground. So we'll see how they did that throughout history. Verse 8. They said in their hearts, let us destroy them, what? Together. They have burnt up all the synagogues of who? Of God in the land. Now verse 9 says, what? We see not our signs, because the enemy has come in now and has removed the things that we need to look to. The things that ties us with the Most High, that connects us with Him. So they came in because of our own disobedience, and they have destroyed our signs. There is no more any prophet, neither is there among us any that knoweth how long. So because of all these things that have happened, we don't have physical men that would walk around and tell us what is to come. We have to go back to the Word to know what's going to come. Next slide. So now we're looking at this warning. In Proverbs 22, verses 28, we have this warning. What does it say? Remove not the ancient landmark which who? Your fathers have set. Now, what this is referring to, obviously, is the same signs. A landmark is a sign. The sign is the way of our forefathers, the Torah, the scriptures, the word. The way of the order that the Most High set Israel to be. How they should live, how they should dress, what they should eat, and different things like that. How we should, conduct our lives with each other and with Him. Those things have changed because the enemies came into our land and introduced other customs. In Job 24:2 it says, some remove the landmarks. They violently take away what? The flocks. The fact that the landmarks have been removed, our flocks have been scattered. That's Israel. Our people have been scattered because of doctrine, have destroyed us. And feed thereof. They have taken away our food. What is the food it's referring to here?
The word.
It's the word, exactly. Let's go to the next slide. In the book of 1 Maccabees 1:1, let's go there. Josh is going to read for me. Let's look at some of the abominations that these heathen have done. 1 Maccabees gives us some history. It was part of the original King James Bible. But now we're going to look at the history of how we arrive at the prophecy that Melech David, King David, had prophesied with regards to Israel. We're going to see the abomination that took place and why we end up with the system of religion that we have now. It didn't just happen overnight. There's a history. 1 Maccabees 1:1. Go ahead and read.
And it happened after Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Shittim, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes, and he reigned in his stead, the first over Greece.
So we got the empire of Greece. Remember the dream of Nebuchadnezzar? With the statue that he saw, head of gold, silver, brass waist, and then iron. We're dealing here with the system of brass, the government of brass. Jump down to verses 10, which is the Grecians.
And there came out of them a wicked root.
So out of this Grecian empire, they had a wicked root. Go ahead.
Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antioch the king.
Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes,
son of the king, who had been an hostage at Rome. And he reigned in the 130 and 70 year of the kingdom of Greece.
So we're dealing with the Grecian Empire. We're starting at this history to come to where we are today. All right? Verses 13.
Then certain of the people were so forward hearing that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinance of the heathen.
So what happened was, during this reign of this wicked root, there was a deal that was set when they came into the land of Israel to conspire to have the people conform to the ways of the heathen. All right, continue. Let's jump down to verses 41. Switch over to 41. We're just giving some little bits of history here. Let's see what they started to do. 41.
Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people.
So this king, King Antiochus, he wrote to his whole kingdom. That kingdom is not just Israel, but all the surrounding countries that they had conquered. He wrote a decree that all should be one people. You all understand that? One world government like we have today, that they're trying to work on today. Let's go, verse 42.
And everyone should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king.
So the heathen didn't have a problem with it. All right? Continue.
Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion.
So now Israel, Judah specifically, those that were in the land, they got together with the elders and discussed what they're going to do, and decided, based upon our religion, a way of life, we're going to go ahead and join up with these people. Go ahead.
And sacrifice unto idols and profane the Sabbath.
So Israel joined with these heathen. They sacrifice unto idols and they profane the Shabbat.
For the king had sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, that they should follow the strange laws of the land, and forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple, and that they should profane the Sabbaths and festival days.
So now we can see the intention of these people was to defile the ordinance of the Most High. They wanted to set up their own system, which is contrary to the system that God gave unto Israel. So the Shabbat was profaned, the temple was profaned, even the holy days was also profaned. Well, continue.
And pollute the sanctuary and holy people, set up altars and groves and chapels of idols.
So they set up altars, cultic groves. That's those places of witchcraft where they got together and they have these Wiccan gatherings and stuff like that. Witches have these
bonfires.
Those bonfires and those different things. All right, and you know what? At the end of this month, this pagan month, they're going to be doing a lot of the same practices too. All right, called Halloween. All right, continue.
And sacrifice swine's flesh.
Well, back up a little bit. They had cultic groves and they had chapels of idols. We're going to see as we go through this. This is the history now. That they brought, what they did was they mixed up the whole thing and they brought the chapels. We know what chapels are today in this world, Christianity. Instead of going to the chapel to pray. If you're in a hospital and a loved one is sick, a person will say, I'm going to the chapel to pray. If you're in the military, I'm going to go to the chapel to pray. There's a chapel set up everywhere. Sometimes even in the courtrooms, there's a little chapel set up there too. All right? So they set things up based on the pagan system. Continue reading. Sacrifice.
And sacrifice swine's flesh.
So now the sacrifices, instead of they using the kosher sacrifices that the Most High set up, they use pork, pigs. Okay?
And unclean beasts. That they should also have their children uncircumcised, and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation.
Profanation. Continue.
To the end that they might forget the law and change all the ordinances.
To the end that they might forget the law. You see, the point of them doing these things was so it can trickle down to the children. They don't focus on the adults. They know that the adults still have in the back of their minds the right practice. But if it can get them young, that's why we find in our system today a lot of media, Disney, you name it, all the different programs. That's why it's called program, because it programs your mind. They get your mind indoctrinated into a system. That's why they start, for example, Miley Cyrus was on Disney. All this funny stuff, cracking jokes and so forth. And then your child attaches himself to this young person, and then they follow this person as they grow and idolize them. And at a certain time, when Miley Cyrus is now an adult and starts to do her craziness, her sodomite ways, and all those different things, your child now emulates the same person. And then another generation will pass, and now sin is acceptable. Continue reading.
To the end, they might forget the law and change all the ordinances.
And change all the ordinances. Continue.
And whosoever would not do according to the commandment of the king,
I want you to take your time in the reading.
He should die.
And whosoever would not do according to the commandment of the king, he said he should die. Continue.
In the selfsame manner wrote he to his whole kingdom, and appointed overseers over all the people.
All right.
And in the cities of Judah to sacrifice city by city.
Okay. Let's jump down to verses 54.
Now the 50th day of the month, Kasalu, in the 145th year, they set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar, and built idol altars throughout the cities of Judah on every side.
So the 15th day, that happened to be a Shabbat. The 15th is a Shabbat. We will look at that on a little bit later on. But they chose the day of worship to defile the temple. All right? They chose, they knew exactly where Israel congregates. And they chose that day to defile the temple. And they set up altars throughout the cities of Judah on every side. Why do you think you find churches at every corner? In most places. Every corner there's a church. Okay? Continue.
And burnt incense at the doors of their houses and in the streets.
They burnt incense also.
And when they had rent in pieces the books of the law.
So what did they do?
Rent in pieces the books of the law.
They tore up our scrolls. They rent in pieces. They tore it up. Because they're offended by it. It's a reminder. It's the same sign that the Most High was talking about. Was trying to tell us. We don't see our signs. Because they started to mess around with it. Go ahead.
Which they found. They burnt them with fire.
They burnt them with fire.
And whosoever was found with any the book of the testament, or if any consented to the law, the king's commandments was that they should be put him to death.
So the king had put a decree. If you follow the scriptures, if they caught you doing the things of the scriptures, you're going to die. All right? So we know that right away that this has been a system started a long time ago, even in our time, because people have been conditioned to break God's commandments. All right? Continue.
Thus did they by their authority unto the Israelites every month.
They did so every month, okay, by the authority of the king.
To as many as were found in the cities. Now the 25th day of the month, they did sacrifice upon the idol altar.
The 25th day of the month. That's interesting.
Which was upon the altar of God. At which time, according to the commandment, they put to death certain women that had caused their children to be circumcised. And they hanged the infants about their necks.
Just like how they hang our people by our necks.
And rifled their houses. And slew them that had circumcised them. Howbeit many in Israel were fully resolved and confirmed in themselves not to eat any unclean thing. Wherefore they choose rather to die.
So Israel, there were some in Israel that says, nah, we're not conforming to the way of the heathen. All right? We're not going to go into that system. We're going to defy the king. All right? That's a few Israelites. Just as you see today. Only a few of us will say, you know what, I'm sticking to what thus saith the Lord. And I'm going to do what the Lord says to do. But the rest of them, oh, there's no problem. We're going to go along with the system. All right, go ahead and finish it up.
Wherefore they choose rather to die, that they might not be defiled with meats, and that they might not profane the holy covenant. So then they died. and there was a great wrath upon Israel.
You know, when you read the scriptures where it says some of our brothers and sisters suffered persecution, some were covered in goat skins, they traveled from place to place and so forth. You know, all of these things are talking about this history here.
Amen.
But when they took these things out of the original Bible, you have no clue of the history of anything. You see, because now it's acceptable to be in a system that goes against the Word of God. Let's go to chapter 3 now. We're going to pick it up at verses 46. I'm going to read from 46 to 48. Chapter 3, verse Maccabees 3 and 46.
Wherefore the Israelites assembled themselves together, and came to Mashpah over against Jerusalem. For in Mashpah was the place where they prayed aforetime in Israel. Then they fasted that day, and put on sackcloth, and cast ashes upon their heads, and rent their clothes.
All right, so Israel was trying to clean up the mess, those that defied the system, the government. Now, what you saw before, we read before, was that the religion and the state were joined together. All right? They had the backing of the state. Everything was merged together. So now Israel decided, those that didn't want to go along with the system, fasted and repented. Okay, it was praying on behalf of the nation. Verses 48.
And laid open the book of the law.
So they opened the book of the law,
wherein the heathen had sought to paint the likeness of their images.
What does it say again?
Wherein the heathen had sought to paint the likeness of their images.
So we can see from the very beginning that the heathen wanted to put their pictures inside the scriptures. That's why when you open the Bibles, most of them, you find pictures of European people in there. Moses is white. Abraham is white. Everybody is white. Everybody looks like Europe. They put their pictures in there, even to this very day. All the angels are white. God is white. Adam is white. How many of y'all have seen white soil?
No.
Only Galicia. That's clear.
Not
Right. And the best soil, everyone knows that the best soil is top soil, dark soil. Okay? So when God made Adam, Adam came out of the ground. Dark. You get all different colors out of that, but you can't get vice versa. So they kind of changed things up a little bit. All right, is that where we stop? All right. So they wanted to paint their likeness in there. Let's go to 2 Maccabees now. Chapter 6. 2 Maccabees, chapter 6. What you see over here, while we're getting that, what you see on the screen to the top, who do you think this is to the top? The picture that you see at the top is found, this is a statue found in the Vatican. The name of the statue is called St. Peter. What's the difference between this statue and the one below? But guess what? That was not the original name of the statue. They changed that name and put that name. They didn't make this specifically for that. This is a pagan statue that you see to the top. In the bottom, you have a statue of Jupiter. All right? So you can start seeing how what they did was they put their idols and gave it so-called holy names. Okay? They started to mix things up until we have it today. So people, if you look at the toe statue of so-called Peter, it's worn off. It's kind of shiny. This one isn't. Because the people that travel to see the statue and bow before it, they kiss the toe. This toe has been kissed for centuries until it's worn off by the lips of people kissing it. All right? Let's take a look at Maccabees now. 1 to verse 6. Go ahead.
Not long after, the king sent an old man of Athens to compel the Jews to depart from the laws of their fathers.
So the king sent an emissary to convince the Jews, Yuhadim, to leave the laws of their forefathers. It's the same thing as don't remove the ancient landmark, okay? Continue.
and not to live after the laws of God,
They don't want them to live after the laws of the Most High.
and to pollute also the temple in Jerusalem,
Mm-hmm.
and to call it the temple of Jupiter, Olympius, and that in Garizim of Jupiter, the defender of strangers, as they did desire that dwell in the place. The coming in of the mischief was sore and grievous to the people.
What do they call it? Mischief. Mischief. What is mischief?
Wickedness.
Evil. Treachery. Continue.
For the temple was filled with riot,
The temple was filled with riot.
and reveling by the Gentiles.
Reveling by who?
The Gentiles,
That's the Europeans. Continue.
who dallied with harlots,
They had prostitutes in the temple of Jerusalem.
and had to do with women within the circuit of the holy places.
Mm-hmm.
And besides that, brought in things that were not lawful.
So the heathen brought in their practices of prostitution, reveling. There's something back in the, not just in the Caribbean, but even in New Orleans. It's called reveling. Mardi Gras, Carnival, all of these things, Bacchanal. All of this stuff came from the heathen, with some flavor in there of so-called Christian names, okay? For example, Fat Tuesday and whatever that take place in New Orleans, during that time of so-called Lent, there's a lot of Mardi Gras processions that goes on in New Orleans. What they have done is to merge the identity of Israel and put in there the pagan system, the Gentile system, you see? So continue.
The altar also was filled with profane things,
The altar of the Most High also had profane things,
which the law forbiddeth.
which the law forbids. Go ahead.
Neither was it lawful for a man to keep Sabbath days or ancient feasts.
So they changed that up. They don't just stop you from doing things. What they do, they put a substitute. They didn't stop them from having sacrifice. They just replaced it with another type of sacrifice. All right, continue.
And to profess himself to all to be a Jew.
Read that again.
Or to profess himself to all to be a Jew.
Neither was it lawful for a man to keep the Shabbat days or ancient feasts, or to call himself a Hebrew. You see? So if they don't want you to be called a Hebrew, what do you think they're going to replace that with?
Gentile.
Gentile. That's why you find in many of the churches, people make the statement, I'm a what? Saved by grace.
I'm a Gentile.
I'm a Gentile saved by grace. You understand? This book is not for Gentiles. This book is for Israel. All of it. This whole entire book. But they have changed things to include themselves in it. You understand that? All right, so we start at verse 6. Let's go to the next slide. This is the abomination that was written. Let's continue verses 7 to verses 8. And I'll look at the screen and we'll look at some things here.
And in the day of the king's birth,
So the king's birthday,
every month they were brought by bitter
constraint.
to eat of the sacrifices. And when the feast of Bacchus was kept,
The feast of Bacchus was kept. The feast of Bacchus. This is where we get the origin of the term bacchanal. Every time you get together and have a bacchanal, you are celebrating the feast of Bacchus. Look at the screen up here, to the top. That's
Bacchanal is.
Bacchanal is partying in the street where you're half naked. As a matter of fact, I think today they're having some Bacchanal in the street downtown Atlanta with the sodomites. All right? Look at the top of the screen. You'll see this is the depiction on the, I think it's a vase of Bacchus. And if you notice carefully, the animal that he's sitting on is a beast that is spotted, a leopard. That's Greece. All right, that's the symbol of Greece. Okay, and there's a nude male. There's always some young males around them because this is all about sodomite. This whole thing is based on homosexuality. All right. Now over here is another picture of Bacchus. You can see the spotted leopard here drinking out of a bowl of some kind, and a chariot and leopards. All of these things are based on the myths of the different gods and whatnot. If you notice around it, you can see angels, all right? But he's in a chariot. All of these things tie back to Santa Claus also. So when it comes down to that time, we'll cover that too. Look at the child here again on top of these beasts. All right, this is part of the whole system. To the top there's a vineyard. These are grapes, groves, and there are children. They always have little children involved in that. Always have little children, because it's pedophilia that it's dealing with too. This is another picture of Bacchus in an aged state. You can see the grapes around his head, the beard like Santa Claus, but look at his head. These are horns. These are horns protruding out of his head, showing you the origin. And there are more behind this, because when you peel away the history of this man here, or this being, you'll find out it's another form of Satan. Yes, good question.
It's just like Carnival.
It's the same system of Carnival. That's where Carnival came from. But nevertheless, as you can see the connection, he has ivy, he has grapes around his head, ivy to the top, ivy over here, and you find the same ivy around Santa Claus. Like I said, I'm going to go into this separately, but there's lots of history between the two of them tied together. That's why on Christmas Day, or Christmas time, there's a lot of feasting, drinking, and a history of allowing the slaves. Everyone is free, they can party, they can have whatever the case may be. All right? And also the mistletoe and all that stuff, because that promotes a lot of, sexual sins.
And when the feast of Bacchus was kept, the Jews were compelled to go in procession to Bacchus.
Procession. Read that again.
The Jews were compelled to go in procession to Bacchus, carrying ivy.
So they had a procession. You all know what a procession is?
Mm-hmm.
Like a parade. Like a parade, okay? They had to have a parade. All right? They are carrying what? Ivy. Verse 8.
Moreover, they went out a decree to the neighbor cities of the heathen by the suggestion of Ptolemy against the Jews, that they should observe the same fashions and be partakers of their sacrifices.
So they forced, there was putting a force upon the people to change their ways to become like the heathen. All right? Go ahead.
And whoso would not conform themselves to the manners of the Gentiles should be put to death.
They will be put to death. Let's go to the next slide. Let's go to 1 Maccabees. Going back to 1 Maccabees. And what I'm going to show you now, we looked at the Grecian Empire for a brief moment. But then the Grecian Empire was transitioned over to the Roman Empire. That transition is mentioned slightly in the 1 Maccabees 14. And we're going to read from verse 16 to see how, while Israel was being persecuted by the Grecian Empire, they sent for help to Rome. They sent for help by joining up with Rome. And this is how the Roman Empire got into Israel. And then when we read the story in the book of Matthew and Luke and so forth, with the Messiah, we can see clearly how the Romans were in the system, were in Judea, but we didn't know how they got in there because the history was removed from the book. So let's read verses 16.
Now when it was heard at Rome, and as far as Sparta, that Jonathan was dead, they were very sorry. But as soon as they heard that his brother Simon was made high priest in his stead, and rule the country and the cities therein, they wrote unto him in tables of brass to renew the friendship and league which they had made with Judas and Jonathan his brethren, which writings were read before the congregation at Jerusalem. And this is the copy of the letter that the Macedonians sent, the rulers of the Macedonian with the city unto Simon the high priest, and the elders and priests, and
The residue.
residue of the people of the Jews, our brethren, send greeting.
All right, let me just wrap this up and tell you what this is referring to. They sent letters to Rome. Okay? They had a communication between Rome when they heard of Jonathan. Now, what happened was the book of Maccabees is a story about some priests, a family of priests who fought against the Grecian people, okay, to preserve the sanctity of the temple. They had a revolt against the Grecian Empire. So during the course of the wars and the battles and so forth, one of the brothers had died, and the letters went back and forth to them with regards to a league or a contract between Rome and themselves. Now, interesting enough, the Lacedaemonians are also known as the Spartans. And when you dig into the history of these Spartans, there are some history that connects the tribe of Dan with the Spartans. Okay? The tribe of Dan traveled up to that area. That's why it says brethren. Alright? Let's jump down to verses 24.
After this, Simon sent Demetrius to Rome with the great shield of gold of 1,000 pound weight to confirm the league with them.
Okay, so they have a league between Rome. This is how Rome got into the picture, because you'll see that when we go through this teaching today, we will see how Rome connects back to the Christianity that we have today. Let's go to verse 38.
King Demetrius also confirmed him in the high priesthood according to those things, and made him one of his friends, and honored him with great honor. For he had heard say that Romans had called the Jews their friends, and confederates and brethren.
So the Romans had called the Jews their friends and confederates and brethren. How is that? It's based on the history that I just mentioned. That the tribe of Dan actually traveled. They were, because Dan dealt with ships also. They was into the shipping trade. And you read throughout some of the history, even in the scriptures. I'm not going to get into that right now. They made some alliance with Javan. Okay, that's that Italian or that region of Italy. They made some arrangements with them and was traveling back and forth until eventually they ended up migrating in that area. Okay, some of them. So the history about the Romans is a very interesting history, because it shows that the Romans were not really originally part of that place called Italy. Okay, Edomites also got into Rome. But the Spartans in particular became part of the Roman Empire later on. That's another story. We'll leave that at that. All right, so do we stop? Okay, so let's move on. So right here you can see on the slide pictures of the Roman Empire now, how they dressed and how they got into the whole picture. We transitioned from the Greece into the Roman Empire. Let's move to the next slide. Now let's take a look at the word church. This is very important, because now we're going to go into the history. I gave you a little bit, but now we're going to go into the church, the whole church thing. All right. Josh, read for me, please.
Second, it is the opinion of other scholars that the word church does not trace its roots from the Greek word
Kurikon.
At all, but rather was borrowed from the ancient Druids of the Anglo-Saxons. They contend that the word church derives from the Anglo-Saxon root Circe. Circe was the goddess daughter of Helios, another name for the sun deity.
So the word church that was used to translate the people of Israel, of the gathering, came from a druid or a cult, a set of people that practiced witchcraft and paganism. And they took that word and they applied it. The word is the name of a goddess, a sun goddess. Okay, continue reading.
The word circuit is related to circus.
The word circuit is related to circus. That explains why when you go to church, it's more like a circus than anything else. Because there's a lot of entertainment that goes on to make the people laugh, cry, and all kinds of different things in there. All right, there's a show that goes on. You see? Continue reading.
Circle,
Circle.
circuit, and circulate. From whence comes the word kirk. The circle because the oldest Druid temples were circular in form. Circuit was also originally a Greek goddess whose name was written and pronounced as Kirky. The word church is known in Scotland as kirk, in Germany as kirky, and in the Netherlands as kirk. The English word church came into use in the Middle Ages, sometime before the 12th century. The Wycliffe translation, 1395, used the word church as churchy, but the Tyndale, 1525, did not.
So when it was translated in the Bible, some used the word and others did not use the word. Go ahead.
Tyndale properly translated Elisica as
Ecclesia
as
congregation. Continue.
He used the word church as churchy only twice in Acts 14:13 and 19:37, both of which refer to buildings connecting to idol worship.
You see, so when he used the word in his translation, he made it very clear that the word was connected to idol worship based on Acts 14 and 13. All right, so when you look at that, you can see that the history behind it, church was not a good thing. It came out from paganism. Let's continue.
Mother church.
So now we're looking at the mother church because there's a beginning, there's a mother. All right, go ahead and read.
The universal church. The term is most often used among Roman Catholics as the Holy Mother Church or Sancta Maria Ecclesia, which is Latin. It is used as designating the whole Christian church or all Christianity collectively.
Let's look at that carefully. The term universal church, the word universal means Catholic, or Catholic means universal. That means that this Catholic church says that it's the mother of all Christian religions. So you can be Adventist, Church of God, Baptist, whatever denomination. Your mama is a Catholic church. By history. That's it. Okay?
The Roman Catholic Church. The Roman Catholic Church is thought by some to be the mother church of the Protestant and other churches that broke away from it over time.
That broke away from Mama's house over time. Go ahead.
Prominent among these are Lutheran, Reformed, Anglican churches, and other Christian faith communities formed over time.
So you have the mama, then you got the daughters that came out of her. They have their own little children, make more little girls, more girls, and it's spread around. So they have all these little daughter churches till where it is today. Galatians 4 and 26. We're going to see who's the mother of us all.
But Jerusalem, which is above, is free, which is the mother of us all.
Where?
Jerusalem.
Jerusalem, which is above, is free, and is the mother of us all. Do you understand that? So it's very clear where our focus should be. That's why we face Jerusalem and pray also. This is a seal in stone, okay, in the Vatican. And it's in Latin, as you can see here, the papal symbol to the top. It says, Most Holy Lateran Church of all the churches in the city and the where?
World.
The world. This is what's written here, in Latin here. All right? It says, of all churches in the city and the world, the mother and head. So it's in Latin, so you don't understand what it's trying to tell you, but it tells you right here that she is the mama for all churches. All of them. This is a book that we'll look at, some excerpts from this book that gives you a good history of many things pertaining to what we're talking about here.